In the last episode, friends, we ended off with just a very, very brief. I didn't even go into this too much of the setting and the context. 29, beginning of the Depression and all of that. I was just going straight more into the text itself. The thesis statement. Let's see. I have it on page 9. Which is not as good as saying which paragraph it is.
That's true.
All righty, so let's just see what we're going to see. 8. Paragraph 8. Christian education aims at securing the supreme good, that is God, for the souls of those who are being educated, and the maximum of well-being possible here below for human society. So that's what Pope Pius XI is going to try and get at. An education that secures the supreme good, which is God, and the maximum well-being possible here. Christian education is not merely for the individual, but for families and for the whole of society. And there can be no true education which is not wholly, that means substantially, at the end of the day, kind of a thing, directed to man's last end. The last end, the telos, necessarily passes by way of Christ, because he alone is the way, the truth, the life, right? Which is what we started back with the title of the talk here. The Lord taught them the proper role of educators. It has to pass by way of Christ.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because he addresses those two things that I was talking about, that education is, if you follow the Latin root, right, and there are some people who dispute this, but it means to lead out of, right, to lead out of darkness into the light, to bring us from what we don't know into what is knowable. And that presumes that something is knowable, and God is the most knowable because he is. So if education at the end of the day fails to bring a person to an awareness of God, and that does not necessarily mean a personal God or even the knowledge of Jesus Christ, but if education at a bare minimum does not introduce the student to the divine, it fails. It fundamentally fails. Because even the Greeks back in the day, could find their way through education to a sense of the divine. They recognized that. That is possible for just humans in their own natural reason. And so when and as part of the problem is that today we start from a point of skepticism as opposed to a point of faith that leads us to seek understanding. And secondarily, so if God is not the telos of the education, there's no point in education. And secondarily, if it does not also supply the temporal needs of the human person, right? And that would, I think that in that instance, we would have to delve into the text a little bit more. But that's not just his material needs, right? That's his material, his communal, his need for love, his need for society. If the educational system is not building up fraternal charity among the fellow students, then it too fails. And really, when you look at that, you think that those are the two commandments that our Lord points out as being the ones that are the most important. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself, right? If education is failing to bring us to that understanding of the human person, then we can't call it education. We can call it indoctrination, or we can call it automatization or something like that, but we can't give it the title of education. Education really should be saved for the truth of what it is.
That's right. That's right. The three societies that the Pope here will point out, distinct, yet when in harmony. See, that I went back to, last time I talked about division and how I'm always real when I hear division, my first is to kind of look behind. It's not like 100%, but you'd be surprised. It's about like 85% that there's something nefarious going on. He's, as a contra to that, the Holy Father's pointing out a harmony, or what Sarah was saying, this harmonious integration of the person.
Right. I think you could almost say that in this instance, it's almost a multiplication, because he builds first on the lowest society, right, the smallest, and then he moves it up through the next stages. So it really does start with the lowest level and it becomes bigger. So you can see it's almost really like, I think we've had this discussion before about how Satan is always like the mirror image of the graph. So if our graph is going up, right, they're going to be on the negative axis, right? If this is our X and Y axis, Christianity is going up to this side, and Satanism is going up to this side, but he's getting further and further into division, whereas the true Christian is going further and further into multiplication and goodness, right? So I think that, you know, we could almost say that this is actually a multiplication of benefits, as opposed to setting people up into, because each society builds on the next, right?
That's right. That's right.
All right.
So, a true education worthy of man, family, civil society, and the church. So, as Sarah said, and he starts right off with the smallest, the family, is instituted directly by God, and the parents are the primary educators of their children. Therefore, when parents speak before school boards or city councils, it really matters, because we all recognize that they are in the first line of being directly affected by what's going on with their children. And that's what gives the punch. Well, one of the reasons it gives the punch to the mamas from Iowa, I guess they're called mama bears or something, is because you recognize they are in the first instance responsible for their children. Parents, I think, more than ever realize they must be directly involved in their children's education. And I think with an increasing emphasis on the religious and moral training. If their children are not moral, then anything else they do is going to be a disaster. Do we really need more intelligent psychopaths pulling levers of influence? In my opinion, that's why we're in the mess we have. We have a whole bunch of so-called smart people and very few moral people.
Right.
There's been a deficiency in the education. Thus, the parents in the first place determine what type of education is best suited for their children, and as such, parents need to be constantly renewed in grace, pondering things within their hearts to determine what is best. So it's not like the parents are going to sit there without any sort of help in discernment and guidance and that sort of thing. Within a community of, preferably community of believers who also share their same goals, and so they're able to decide, is this like, I know plenty of parents. One year it's a great year to homeschool, and another year they need an institution to go. So it's kind of a back and forth depending on what the needs of the family are at that time. But let's, and I certainly want to go ahead and put that. I know excellent students who came, and I mean excellent in the fullest sense of the term, from public schools, and fabulous people from private schools and enriching homeschool experiences. But I also know the opposite as well. So therefore, we cannot have a standard, this must be done, not from us as a family perspective, but not from the state either. The state can't reach in and tell to the family, you must do it this way or this way, this way. There must be a freedom of choice for the family.
Well, I think that there's a really important point to be made here, that there's a radical difference in this concept that the family is the building block of society, right? That society is only necessary because families cannot provide it. I think that they use the term perfect societies, right? He'll talk about the society as being a perfect society, and by perfect they don't mean really awesome and great. They mean simply complete, right? Because perfecere in Latin means to complete. So the civil society, unlike the family is not able to take care of every single one of its material needs. God knows that. And so consequently, he did not intend, he said very clearly to Adam, man, it is not good for man to be alone, right? Man needs to be in communion with other people. But what's really important to recognize is that unlike the statists and the communists who believe that the state precedes the family and that all of the benefits that come to the family are dispensed at the gracious, generous hands of the state, this is a radical difference in that God created the family first, and as a result of the need that the families had inherently, he permitted the goodness of society to grow to meet the needs of the individual family, and not the society the family is not there to serve the society, but rather society is there to meet the needs of the individual family. And when that society ceases to meet the individual needs of the society, of the individual family, it has become an illegitimate society. So what you were saying there is that the state cannot reach in and tell an individual family what it must do, right? It's the obligation of the family, on the other hand, to go to the state, like these mothers are doing in Iowa and different places, to go to the state and say, no, this is what we are asking from you. Because the subsidiarity does not run from the state to the family. The subsidiarity is the family has all of the proper rights, and we bestow them on someone else to assist us. It's not like the state is benevolent and just says, oh, you can have these rights. No. The family, the parents are the primary educators. They can certainly use their own intelligence to reach out to other people to assist them in educating their children. But when those people that they have hired, right, to assist them in educating their children are failing them, they have a right to fire them.
That's exactly right. And we will stop there firing them. I like that idea quite a bit. Till then, fides, Oratio.
If only we could.